Hey there, it's another Slightly Redneck video. Today is August 20th, so it's right in the middle of the summer harvest, and I got vegetables coming in like crazy. So I want to talk a little bit about canning, how to preserve some of your foods. And really what I'm going to be talking about today is just kind of the basics of canning. It's going to be a pretty basic video, so if you're an experienced canner, there may not be much that you're going to get out of this, but you know, if you want to watch the video, you want to leave me some comments, if you have some tips, tricks, anything that I can use, I'm always open for constructive criticism. So let's get to it. What I want to talk about first is kind of the equipment that you're going to need when it comes to canning. So let me get the stuff organized, and we'll do a walkthrough of that. Alright, well, talking about equipment, the first thing that you're going to need is a canner. This is a hot water bath canner right here, this big black, well, black and white speckled thing. You're going to need one of those to can most things that are going to be high acid. That would include pickles, tomatoes. We're going to have to add a little lemon juice to the tomatoes to bring the acid level up a little bit. But anything you're going to pickle, okra, zucchini, cucumbers, any of that kind of stuff that's got vinegar in it or high acid fruits, you're going to use a hot water bath canner. It's also what you're going to use for like jams and jellies. So, most common thing, and that's what I suggest starting with. If you want to get into canning things like green beans, corn, all that stuff's going to require a pressure canner. That's a whole nother video in itself, which I'll do someday whenever I'm pressure canning stuff. So, this is my canner. You can buy this at any restaurant. Use when it's hot, I've got it sitting on the stove heating up already. Make sure you use mitts, it's going to be hot and it'll burn you. So, this is going to come with a jar lifter. So you set this on the side. If you can see how that works, it just sits down in there just an inch or two. Set your jars inside there, and then you can lower the whole thing in and pick the whole thing up. First thing you do when you're going to can is put this on the stove and get it heated up before you even start anything else, because it's going to take forever to heat this up to boiling. So other things that you're going to need, various pots. If you're going to do a brine, you'll need a pot to do your brine in. I'm going to be peeling tomatoes in that pot. Here's another trick that makes it nice, or a trick. I don't know if I've talked about one yet. This pot back here has just got some water in it, about 3/4 of the way full, and I'm heating it up while I'm heating my canner up. So if I need to add water to my canner for any reason, I've got hot water ready to go. I don't have to add cold water to it and then wait for it to get back up to heat. This pan right here that's starting to boil, I need to turn down. There we go. That little pan back there is going to be for my lids. They're going to go in that pan and stay hot while we're getting everything ready. Okay, you're going to need jars. I've got a series of jars here. These are all regular mouth jars as compared to a wide mouth jar. A wide mouth jar is significantly larger. Make sure when you buy your jars, I prefer wide mouth jars, but I'm out and I have these. So make sure when you buy your jars, you pay attention to if you're getting wide mouth or regular mouth, because the lids are specific. You need either regular mouth or wide mouth lids to fit on top. This is a lid. You're going to need a lid for each jar, and you're going to need a ring for each jar. Now here's another little trick. Rings, once the jar is sealed, they can come off. So if I'm going to can tomatoes tonight and then maybe pickles tomorrow, I can use the same rings, because 24 hours later it's going to be sealed, the ring can come off the jar, and I can use the same ring. You don't have to have nearly as many rings as you do lids. You have to have a lid for every single jar. So make sure you get the right size. Narrow mouth, same thing with the bands, the rings. You need narrow mouth or wide mouth. You're going to need some canning tools. Over here I have canning tools. How convenient is that? You need a funnel, probably. This comes in a kit, so it's the easiest way to buy it. I think Ball sells it, probably other brands too. But this is a funnel, goes inside the jar, and you just pour your brine, your liquid, whatever it is through here, so it doesn't go all over the place, spill all over the side of the jar. This is a lid lifter. This is just basically a magnetic stick. You're going to use that to pick up the lids out of the hot water over there so you don't burn yourself. Alright, this, let's see if I can demonstrate this without blocking the camera. This right here, this blue thing, is a jar, I don't even know what to call it, rim wiper, but it has these little notches on it, so depending on how much headspace you need in your jar, like if it says a 1/4 inch headspace, you might put it right there. And it even tells you what it is. You probably can't read that, I don't think, but anyway, now you can't read it. But it does have markings here to tell you how far that is. So you can measure down a 1/4 inch or whatever on the jar, and then you can run it around the side and kind of wipe that off. You're always going to wipe it off with a wet wash rag or a paper towel or something like that before you put the lid on anyway, to make sure it's clean. Alright, these are jar lifters. It's like a pair of pliers that grip onto the jar neck, like so you can pull them in and out of the canner. And that's probably the bare minimums of what you are going to need. One other thing I should mention though is always can off of a recipe. This is a fantastic resource. This is the Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. Great resource. It's just a big recipe book for canning. It tells you how long you need to can things, how long, I mean, it's a great book. Always follow a recipe when you're canning. I'm following a tomato recipe. I'm just canning straight tomatoes today. My recipe calls for me to add 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to each jar in order to get the acid levels up so they're safe for water bath canning and storage. So I'm going to follow that. It also will tell you the length of time that they need to be processed. So I'm going to be demonstrating this on tomatoes today, but the same process works for anything that you're going to make. Make sure you wash your jars, make sure you wash your lids, your rings, your tools. Everything you're going to be using needs to be washed. Washed in hot water with soap. You can run it through your dishwasher if you want, it doesn't really matter. But everything needs to be sterilized. So I'll be back with you again once I get everything started here and show you the next step. Let's get to canning. So first things first, once you washed all your equipment, all your jars, put your jars inside your canner. And I do this well before I prepare, unless I'm preparing something really complex, I do this well before I prepare all my fruit or whatever's going to go in the jars. Notice I've got these about 3/4 of the way full of water so they don't float whenever I drop them into the water. So what I'm going to do is set this into the water and let it start getting hot because, like I said, it takes forever. So I'll just simply set it down into the water, do it slowly, make sure you don't overfill the canner, overflow it. And I didn't put enough water in there. They're floating still. So I just push them down. Push them down slow. You don't want to splash hot water all over yourself like I almost did there. Make sure they're all completely underwater. Now that's starting to boil, so I'm going to kick it down just a little bit. It'll stay right at a simmer, a nice gentle boil while I get everything else ready. After that, prepare all your fruits and your brine or whatever you're going to put in the jars. And this is not, I'm canning tomatoes tonight. This is not a video about canning tomatoes. I'll do a separate video about canning tomatoes specifically. If you want to watch that, just click the link. Okay, the next thing, once you're getting ready to fill your jars, you should have your canner pretty much up to heat. Leave the lid on it so it doesn't boil down too much. Get your jars in there, get them sterilized. While they're doing that and you're getting ready to heat your brine and stuff up, put your lids, I just put the lids. It's probably good to put the rings and the lids in there in a pot with some water in it and get that to where it's just almost boiling. Just keep it hot. After that, it's time to get your brine or your liquid or whatever you're going to be filling the jars with once you put the fruit inside. Of course, if you're doing jelly, you're going to be heating up your jelly at this point and getting it ready. So anyway, I'm just putting a pot of water on because I'm doing whole tomatoes today and they're just going to be canned in water. So anyway, again, if you want to watch the video specific to canning tomatoes, I'll go through a little bit more detail with the tomatoes themselves and give you the recipe that I use for that, and you can find that at the link above. So once I've got my lids heated up, I've got my jars all heated up and sterilized, I've got my fruit ready, whatever it is I'm going to can, now my brine if I'm going to use brine. What I'll do next is remove the jars from the canner. The great thing about this, and be careful when you do this because there is boiling water in there, kick that down a notch so it doesn't boil quite so hard. And these handles are going to be hot, so use pot holders or something to grab them with. Just lift them up, there we go, set that on the edge. Alright, now here's another trick. Whenever I get these jars out, I'm going to pour one of them in here. The rest of them I'm going to put in my hot water can that's in the back because if I pour them all in the canner, whenever I put the full jars back in, it'll overflow. That's probably plenty of water. So, I can't reach it. Alright, set it down on a placemat and pack it with your fruit, whatever your fruit's going to be. Once you get your jar full, leave about a 1/4 inch probably of headspace. I think I'll get a little more in there over here. Then you're going to fill your jar with your brine or your liquid, in this case water. This is where your funnel comes in handy. This is going to be hot boiling water. In most cases you're going to use a boiling water or boiling brine. Make sure you don't overfill your jar. Once your jar is filled, you need to remove the air bubbles from it. I'm going to use a knife. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to use a butter knife. Chopsticks work really well. Just push the knife down in there, down towards the bottom. Move the fruit around a little bit to get air bubbles out. If you don't do this, then you'll end up with a jar that has lots of air in it and it doesn't work very well. So you can see it went down just a little bit, so I'm going to add just a touch more water in there. About a 1/4. Alright, so once you've got your jar packed and you've got your recipe all right, everything's ready to go and you're ready to seal it up, you're going to want to clean it off. This also comes in handy, this little tool here that I showed earlier. This will tell you what your gauge is. So most of your recipes say like a 1/4 inch headspace. That right there is a 1/4 inch. It's just touching the top of the water. I don't know if you can see, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Probably won't be able to see much of that on camera. But that gives you an idea of how full you want to fill your jar. Try not to fill it over that. Once you're done with that, then wipe the rim of the jar. You can see I got lots of tomato on the rim of the jar. So we're going to wipe that off. Make sure it has a good place to seal. Then, get your lid lifter. Pick you out a lid. Try to get only one. I inevitably get two every time. Set it on your jar. Put your lid on. Now careful, this jar is going to be hot because it just came out of the canner. Tighten your lid just finger tight. You don't need to crank that down. Now I'm going to set it back in the canning rack. Alright, so once you get your jars filled, you get them back in the canner. I only ended up with 2 jars, so always a good idea to have extra jars just in case, but I only ended up with 2 jars. All you're going to do is lower this slowly into the canner. Now with 2 jars, I'm not going to overfill it, so I don't have to worry about it, but with 4 or 5 jars I might. Now, if you want your water level to be about 1 inch above the top of the jars, and I don't know if you can tell, but it's nowhere near 1 inch above the top of the jar. I'm going to have to add some water. Luckily, I've got some hot water over here, so I will pour it and try not to burn myself into the canner. It's going to take most, if not all of it. There, I'm about 1 inch over the jars now. So, once that takes place, put your lid on your canner, bring it up to a full boil. It shouldn't take very long right now. Once it reaches a full boil, start your timer for 40 minutes or however long your recipe calls for, 15 on pickles, several different things, but look that up and confirm that. And make sure that your lid stays closed. If it stops boiling at any time during the process, bring it back to a boil, start your timer over for whatever time length that you need. Alright, so once your timer goes off and your canner's done, then most recipes are going to call for you to take the lid off, kill the heat, let it set for 5 minutes and cool down, and I've already done that. Then I lift the jars up, or lift the rack up on top of the canner. All you're going to do is remove your jars, pour the water off before you carry it across your floor, just to be safe, and set them in a cool place on a towel, a pot holder, something like that, and let them cool. What you'll hear is the lids popping. That's a normal sound. That's what you want to hear. The next day, let them cool for about 12-14 hours at least. Better to let them cool for like 24 hours. Check the seals. Push down on the lids. I'm not going to touch this because it's hot, but push down on the lids, and if they don't bounce back, if they don't pop, they're sealed. If any of them didn't seal, then put them in your fridge. Use them within a month. And that's pretty much all there is to canning. Like I said, these are canned tomatoes, but once you get your recipe figured out, the time that you're going to can, it all is pretty much the same. So hopefully that's helpful, and again, leave your comments, your questions. If you've got tips to add, that's great. I love hearing from you. And as always, God bless.